Okay, so it's a beautiful day, and I think we should go over to the West Whately Chapel and see if we can scare up some music. Come this way. I see some cars. It's looking promising. All right, coast is clear. We're almost there. Here comes a car. I believe we're in luck. I hear music. It's Peter Blanchette. Peter!
You doing, Bill? It's good to be here.
Socially distant.
At least 6 feet.
Elbow bump. All right.
Stay right where you are.
So while you're here, gee, how about doing a set?
I love playing here, so let's do it.
All right, take it away.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to play some movements from Bach's first violin partita, and I'm going to play the Allemande and the Courante and the Sarabande and the Tempo di Borea. So. Thanks. That's the first time I've played that for an audience, very small audience, but a very well-loved audience. No, this is during this COVID period, and before COVID, actually, I was quite ill for a year anyway, and had to stay at home and recuperate. And I spent the last year working on, there are other movements to this piece too that I just played. In fact, each piece has a double. Each piece has a variation of itself. And but I wanted to play a few other things tonight, so I just thought I'd play the 4 main movements. And I've spent, mostly this year arranging this piece. And you'd think, it's violin music, and I think it sits so well on the guitar and a plucked instrument, and yet it's such an amazing piece on the violin too. So a big part of the arranging of it is to learn how to not hear it as a violin piece anymore, because when you play this on the violin, those notes can go na, na, yeah, da, da, and the notes can pull out. And when you do it on the plucked instrument, you have to do that all through silence and rhythm. So when you get to the end of that little phrase and it goes, the silence between the phrases becomes really all you have to separate them.
It's great. One of the advantages the guitar player has, though, it would seem, playing that, is that it's a lot easier for you to play double stops and triple stops.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. That's right. That's right. Although a lot of the stuff he writes for the violin, the single lines, are actually quite hard on the guitar because it's tuned in fifths, and so a lot of those lines, but you're right, it is true that double stops are in general much easier. What's harder are the fast lines because they're more idiomatic to the violin, and when you have those 5 notes before you change strings instead of 4 like you do on the guitar. So
well, he seems for the violin to squeeze in those chords by having the violins play one note slightly in front of the other 2.
Right.
And
That's right.
And blend it into one sound.
That's right. Yeah. The whole, you get that like sound.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I will. I'm going to play some earlier music now, some Dowland. This is a piece I always play whenever I play anywhere, just because I've found that there's a piece that you really love, and whenever you come and you play somewhere, it really tells you what's your guitar sound like tonight. What's this room sound like? What's the atmosphere feel like? It's like a friend who you sort of get to see how they look tonight. It's called Lady Rich's Galliard. It's by John Dowland. can't play one by Dallin. I have to play more than one because. Let's see. Here we go. This one is another Galliard by Dallin. This is Mr. Langton's Galliard, John Langton's Galliard. Should only take a half hour, it usually does. play a piece by the other greatest lutenist that ever lived, other than Dowland, and that was Sylvius Leopold Weiss. And he was a friend of Bach's, friend of the family. And it's very tempting to imagine that any music that Bach wrote for the lute, that Weiss may have played it. Unfortunately, that's really nothing borne out by any evidence. But Weiss wrote some very beautiful music in very similar style to Bach's music. So this piece is called an Entree, sort of a prelude-like piece. And I've been working on some of his music. So I think I'll play this Entree, and then I'll try to play a little gavotte after that. I have no idea if I can actually play it by memory, but what the heck? I mean, go for it. The worst that could happen is I could open my eyes at the end of the piece and there'd be almost no one left in the audience. So, okay. Well, that's the Prelude, and this is Gavotte. What do you think? Are we getting to an hour here?
Oh yeah, I think we got maybe time for one more.
Yeah?
Encore.
Okay, I'll play one that people seem to really love to hear, this old Irish tune played this way. So this one's called Shebeg Shemor, and also the Bold Fenian Men. A couple of, well, it's not, one of them is by Turlough O'Carolan, who's really the, Irish national composer for all intents and purposes, and the other is a more sort of a political song from the 100 years ago, I'd say.
Shebeg Shemor was written by O'Carolan.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for that wonderful concert, Peter.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
I have received word from all our fans in the ether and the great, the World Wide Web have been begging me to ask if you would play an encore.
Okay.
And before you do, I just want to re-announce that next week, next Wednesday, that would be October 14th at 7:30, we will be treated to American string music from the hands of Bruce Molsky, fiddler, and Tony Trischka, banjoist. And I hope you all join us then for that show. And thanks again, and take it away.
Thanks. This is the prelude to the first cello suite of Bach.
Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Watermelon Wednesdays, or as I said in the email, Pumpkin Wednesday, because we're a little late getting out of the starting blocks this year due to some unforeseen circumstances, which you can see the evidence of in our face right now. But I'm delighted to, this is our second show of the year, and I'm delighted to welcome back to Watermelon Wednesdays one of my favorite performers and a great person to boot, Peter Blanchette. Peter, welcome back to the chapel.
Thank you, Paul.
You were here during the first season of Watermelon Wednesdays.
I think that's right, yeah.
It's a very select
How many years ago was that?
It was in 2000, so
Wow.
21 years ago.
Wow.
But then you were here, I think you played with Gene Chain and the virtual consort.
Yeah, Charlie Schneeweiss and Gene, and also played here with, another time with the duo Orfeo, Joe Ricker and Jamie Balmer.
Oh yeah,
And I was looking forward to playing here this summer with my Archguitar duo partner, guy who lives in Madrid, Spain, Mane Larelia, but that didn't happen because not much did happen this summer, did it?
So I wanted to say also, I love your music, which is why I like to have you back so often, and more often in the future, I'm hoping. And as I said on one of my write-ups, I have more of your CDs than any other composer except for Lennon and McCartney. So.
All right, at least somebody does.
Oh.
I mean, if you can say that about, you know.
Yeah, and Bach. I have a bunch of Bach too. So you're right up there with Beatles and the Bach.
There you go.
The Bachmeister.
Yeah, auspicious company. Yeah.
So, so I think one thing that people often wonder, and that I enjoy hearing about, is the evolution of your instrument. If you could say a word or two about that.
Sure. Well, this instrument is actually an old instrument now. It was built in 1980 for me, and I was a young guy, 20 years old, and I designed it together with a wonderful luthier named Walter Stanel, who was also my sort of first real guitar teacher when I studied guitar at Boston Conservatory. Walter and I wanted to realize my dream of an instrument that was a combination of a lute and a guitar. And by that I mean an instrument that sounds more like an 18th century or even 17th century lute sounds, which is a sort of smaller sound, but very balanced and very delicate, and yet an instrument that you played a little more like the modern guitar. And there are a lot of technical things you could say about the design, but basically what we did was we made an instrument that, because of the way, for instance, the strings are so close to the face of the guitar, much closer than an ordinary Spanish guitar, you have to pluck the strings in a more similarly to the way you pluck strings on a lute or even a harp. You have to sort of move away from the instrument because you can't move down towards it. And therefore you get this, when you get used to playing that way, you get a sound that I find very compelling and lovely, which is a very sort of choral sound, almost sounds like voices singing, clearly together, which is really, I'm very proud of what we did. But I'm also very aware that we were also just lucky. I mean, I'd like to say we figured it all out, and came up with the magic formula, and it worked. But really, the process was more like, well, I liked this small shape. It looked comfortable to hold. I grew up playing electric guitar, and I played a Gibson Les Paul when I was young. And they're kind of a small but heavy electric guitar, and very easy to play. Wonderful, wonderful guitar. And I thought the shape of this instrument, which is a copy of an instrument called a vihuela, it's a Spanish and it's an Iberian Renaissance lute, really. It looked like it would be very comfortable to hold, and it is. mostly because you don't have to, when you have a big guitar with a big bout here, you have to kind of put your shoulder like that over the instrument. And you sort of can really play more sort of like right in front of your face, the instrument, which these are all things that turn out to make you play a certain way, because I've been playing just this guitar, this same guitar, since 1980. And so, I mean, the first day I played it, I knew it was right for me, strangely, even though when I first played something with 11 strings on it, I was, I thought, what am I doing? But there was something about the sound that the process always was, this instrument made me play the way I play, for better or worse.
Did that instrument lead you to play certain music other than, as opposed to wanting to play certain music first and then doing it on the guitar, or having the guitar inform you that, oh, I think this would sound really good on this instrument?
Right. That's a great question, and the truth really is, you know, again, I was a young person then. I was 20 years old. I just started to get into classical music just 3 years earlier, and as a young person, I didn't know the vast, you know, repertoire that what one would play if one were a, you know, classical guitarist, meaning playing music, you know, maybe even from the Renaissance up to modern music. That's 500 years. But at the same time as I had this instrument, I started to really fall in love with Bach. And what's really funny is one of the pieces I'm going to play tonight, the first music that I heard by Bach that just, you know, so the answer to your question is, it was sort of simultaneous, because I fell so hard in love with Bach's music that if I played electric bass, I was going to play Bach on the electric bass. You know, if I played harmonica, I was going to be the guy who played Bach, because Bach, I mean, when I heard it, in fact, I started to learn to play the harpsichord, and had a harpsichord built for me, but I think I was too far along in my development as a plucked instrument player to really, at that age, learn to play the keyboard. I could play a little bit of Bach on it and play okay, but you know, so it sort of, it narrowed the choices in terms of my desire to play so much Bach and Renaissance music too, I would say, as well, that had I kept playing six-string guitar, I think I would have been more open to playing a lot of the repertoire that guitarists play, like Spanish Romantic music, and even, you know, the Italian. There's a lot of, classical music written for the guitar from the 1900s and 1800s, and I would have played more of that. And then there's amazing music from Latin America in the 20th century, Villalobos, Barrios. I think I would have played all that stuff if I played the six-string guitar more. But at the same time, I also didn't want to just play the same music I heard so many guitarists were playing that same repertoire, and it's actually a rather small repertoire. And I just sort of thought, like, I mean, think of it from any other style, musical style. Let's say you were a guitarist and singer, and in this age, and all you played was, I don't know, classic rock hits. That's it, nothing but that. People would sort of find that strange. It'd be a little limiting. Well, on the one hand, that's what I see classical guitarists doing, because they have to play the repertoire written for the guitar, which is very small. But at the same time, I'm someone who, you could also say I'm somebody who just, like, all I want to play is Jimi Hendrix. Only Jimi Hendrix. Right. Because I mean, I play almost only Bach and some Renaissance music. I devote most of my time to learning and arranging Bach's music. But so this instrument just, I had it made because there's certain things you can play on it, like that Bach wrote, like something like this. And that range that I have when I play in the key of C, which I'm doing right there on this instrument, it's so comfortable to play, and it's such a wide range from everything I've learned about Bach, it seems more like what fits his music better to me. And by better, I don't, like, people often look at this guitar and they think, oh, it must be really difficult to play. It's actually the opposite. You know, you don't design something to make things harder for yourself.
Yeah, right.
You design things to make things easier for yourself.
Sure.
So to me, it's easier to play, although it's different. There's a technique, you know, that's similar to the lute, where you have to play some bass strings and, you know, because to me the really important thing in Bach is to be able to play in multiple voices at the same time, very separately. And that, as far as I can tell, I mean, there's no way around that. That takes a lifetime.
Well, you know, you remind me of so many other players that I've heard or that have even been here, that they start talking about Bach and they just lose it, and they just, you know, they just get all starry-eyed, and they'll stay here after the show because they like the acoustics, and they'll just, if they're a cellist, they'll just start playing what you were playing, the cello suites,
Yes.
or if they're fiddlers, they'll start playing a partita.
That's right.
And it's great after the show. I don't want them to stop.
Right. This room, that's something that I noticed the moment I played in this room. This is the ideal room to play Bach solo chamber music, because it's wooden and it's got a little liveliness to it, but it's intimate and small. Like, you know, so you might want to play in a chapel and everything, and a chapel has big, long, ringing acoustic, and that's kind of cool. This has just the right amount, and you know, it's funny. Locations they inform so much about where you play. Like, you know, when you look out, I mean, I just heard a bird out the window, and I see green out the window, and I remember one night playing here. I don't know which time it was, but I remember we were really worried that a thunderstorm might be coming.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, there was no wind, there was no movement, the air was so still, and you heard the distant, like, you heard one. And then everyone was like, oh, is this going to be bad, you know? And you know, even if it did rain, we all would have been inside, but it would have felt like we were in this, you know, this little music box of a room. And I love that. I love places. I love when you play somewhere and you remember that place. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, as you know, all my life, off and on, I've also been a street musician.
Right.
And you know, as recently as 2018, I was over in Spain and France and Netherlands, playing along the Camino de Santiago, playing in the streets with my friend Manet on 2 Archguitars, playing, and you know, we find these magical places to play, and these like medieval towns, you know, up in the mountains in the Pyrenees or whatever, and yeah, there's something about the geography of a place, and so it's very inspiring, and it's very, you know, it's just a little chapel-like room here, so I can see why anybody who plays the cello. I mean, this is an unreal room for a cello.
No, it's superb.
Yeah.
So I want to go back slightly to Les Paul. And then you jump into this thing.
Yeah.
And that's like from one year to the next. What happened?
Well, what happened was when I was 16 years old, actually. I'm going to take my glasses off because they're steaming up. When I was 16 years old, October 16th, 1976, I was, you know, that morning I woke up someone who played blues electric guitar, rock electric guitar, and I thought I was going to play my whole life in, you know, bands and play in bars or play wherever I could, and that, because that's what I was into. And an old friend of mine, girlfriend of mine at the time, said that, hey, there's this guy coming to UMass. He's supposed to be like the best guitarist in the world. His name is Julian Bream.
Wow.
And he's coming to play at the Fine Arts Center. And you know, this is not, in 1976, there wasn't any internet. You couldn't just instantly find out. Well, I mean, it's just, the world is so different now. When I heard he's supposed to be the the greatest guitarist in the what? I've never heard of him. So I did go to the library and got a couple records and said, yeah, let's get tickets, let's see him. And we had front row center seats. And it probably cost like $5 each, the tickets back then. Right. And I sat in the front row, and I did listen to a couple of Julian Bream's records before I went. The great English guitarist and lutenist, for anyone who doesn't know, who just passed away this summer. Yeah. I think he's 87 years old or something like that. And I had, what they call a religious experience, I guess. I sat there in front of him. He came out. He played John Dowland on the lute. Funny enough, he played Bach, but the Bach didn't really get me what he played. Again, I didn't know Bach's music really at all at that point. He played more modern music, Benjamin Britten, and he played some incredible music by Villa-Lobos. And I just instantly just thought, like, how can one person make so much music on just the guitar? He doesn't need a bassist. He doesn't need another guitarist, no drummer. And this music was like, 1 minute you're listening to music from the court of Queen Elizabeth I, really old music, really of a certain time, Shakespeare's time. And then the next minute he's playing, music from the 1920s from Brazil. And the next minute he's playing, and I was so awestruck. And the beauty of his playing and the virtuosity of his playing it. And he played the first half of the concert on the lute and the second half on the guitar. I just said, I went back to Boston, where I was from, Boston area, sold my Les Paul like that week. I traded it in. I got nothing for it compared to what I should have. And if I owned it today, I could, whatever. Yeah. But I happily traded it in for a not very good Martin classical guitar and a bunch of credit at the music store so that I could buy sheet music. Because I didn't know how to read music. And all I knew was I had that program, and I went into the sheet music store thinking, see, I love things like this because you realize there's a time, you know nothing about something that you're now going to spend 40 years doing. And I walked into that store with the program and said, I want all this music here. You see these titles? And of course, that music back then in 1976 was very hard to get. It was very expensive. You had to order it from Paris, certain pieces and things. But I did. I ordered them, and I got every one of his records, and I could only learn by ear at that point. And so I learned to play this piece here. I learned this off a record, not Julian Bream record, but I think a John Williams record or something. I learned to play the whole piece by ear so that I could audition to go to the conservatory. It just, it was just one of those crazy moments. I guess when you're young, you have the ability to just be electrified by something, and everything changes.
So you like the Dowling more than the Bach, but then you spend the rest of your life playing Bach.
Yeah, well, I started playing the classical guitar, and in the beginning playing, 6-string classical guitar, trying to play a lot of the Spanish music, the more standard stuff guitarists play. And I loved it. I loved learning. I loved studying it. And that one Bach piece I learned because basically I read, if you learn a Bach piece, that's impressive. So you should play that when you audition. And I auditioned for a wonderful man at Boston Conservatory. It was the dean of the conservatory, and I played for him the piece, and then he said, hey, he really liked the way I played it. And he said, because I played the guitar since I was a little child, so I could play. I could play pretty well, If I thought I could play something, I could play it pretty well. And he said, can you play this section right here on the second page again? And I had to tell him, because you have to bring the music with you. I said, I actually can't read the music. And he said, you can't read the music? How'd you learn the piece? And I said, by listening to the record and, copying it by ear. And he just said, well, come to the conservatory. We'll teach you how to read music. And that was a huge, I mean, that was a moment for me that just, you know, boosted my confidence and it was a recognition that I was working, you know, and getting somewhere,
Sure.
and which you don't know. You don't know until you have colleagues and teachers.
That's right.
You know, and so yeah, Bach. Then I went to the conservatory. When I went to the conservatory, my guitar teacher was Walter Stanel, the guy whose name is signed to the inside of this guitar. A brilliant man, artistic like father to me since the day I met him, and he loves Bach. He loves Bach like I now love Bach. And I came in and played for him, and he said, "Hey, you know, man, you can play pretty well. You know, like, why don't you play some Bach?" And I was, "Oh, you know, I don't know. I don't know. I can't really. I just couldn't imagine you could play it. I couldn't imagine I could play it for some reason." And then he just he was not a pushy teacher or a demanding teacher, anything like that stereotype. And he just said, "Well, you know, here's this one cello suite," and it wasn't that one; it was a different one. He just, you know, like, just take a look at it, just try it, you know. And I wanted to be a good student, so in a sort of obedience, I started to work on it. And then he told me the smart thing that he told me. He said, "There's a really good record right now of this violinist named Sergio Luca, who's playing the 6 sonatas and partitas for the violin. And I just heard it, you know, and it's really good." So I left my lesson that day and I went to a record store on Boylston Street and I bought that record on Nonesuch. And I went home. I was living at my parents' still when I was in my first year of school. I went home and I remember my mother, my mother thought I was sick or something because I laid down on the couch and I put on these headphones and I started listening to the Bach solo violin music. And I just didn't get up for like 3 days. I just stayed there. And you know, your parents, you know, you got this now, you know, I've had kids, my kids have grown up, you know, your kids do some really weird behavior. You're like, what's going on? And it's like, I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to do it. I just over and over, are you okay? Are you sick? And I don't know why, but listening to that recording of Luca playing the sonatas and partitas, I just listened to it. It's a lot of music too, you know.
Yes,
each one is about a half hour long, so it's like 3 hours of music. I would just listen to it. You know, record 1, side A, side B, record 2, side A, side B, record 3, side A, side B. Start again. I just did it over and over and over and over again for days and really for months. And then I got into Glenn Gould. Mm-hmm. These are all people that, you know, Walter said, "Oh, you got to hear Glenn Gould play Bach on the piano." And then I listened to that, and then it was like, and then suddenly it just became like, I don't know what. It's like, I mean, sometimes when people describe artificial intelligence, you know, like I think it was like there's a sort of artificial intelligence metaphor there, which was like something in my brain just said, this is the music that we're interested in. This is the music. To me, Bach's music is very similar experience to nature. It's just like, you know, what a beautiful mountain that is. I never get tired. I mean, this little spot where we are. I've driven through here a million times because, you know, I lived in Shelburne Falls for a long time and come down to Northampton, and I moved to Northampton, and, you know, I've driven by this little area, and, you know, every time you come down into this spot, you see it. Bach's music is a lot like that. It has these places in it that I don't know why. It's miraculous to me, you know.
Yeah. I do know. I mean, I feel the same way both about here and about Bach's music. So well, thank you for letting me talk to you, or having you talk to us about your experiences and your take on music, especially Bach. I totally get it, and I can't wait to hear some. So,
well, it's just just a pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm so glad you could make it in these troubled times. And by the way, I think Bach and your playing of Bach and your other music, the Italian cinema music and everything else, is the perfect elixir and balm for these troubled times. So I'm having you play, and I'm getting Maeve Gilchrist to come back and play harp.
Right.
And I had Elisa Amador, a wonderful singer-songwriter, a couple of weeks ago. And then Bruce Molsky and Tony Trischka are coming next week. And by the way, so yes, Bruce Molsky, really old-time fiddle, and Tony Trischka, all kinds of banjo, bluegrass, Peter Blanchette. Thank you so much, Peter.
Thanks, Paul.